Earlier, I talked about the way in which being a both and bridge person can help us to be more forgiving, right? Realizing what we don't know about the other, seeing simultaneously the good and the bad. But in the story that I told you about the king and the accused, it's the one seeking forgiveness who had to walk the bridge and demonstrate their sort of bridge personness, right? Why is that? So first, to think about it just in connection with our relationship with God and God forgiving us. One thing is, maybe it's an empathy thing. Right? God, of course, embodies love and law, all kinds of polar opposites, and God, maybe to forgive, needs to know that we do too. It's kind of a shared values. Or maybe, in some way, our embrace of the tension manifests that aspect of God in the world, enables the divine harmony to shine through. And so not only strict justice, but compassion and mercy become possible. Right? Maybe when we imitate God in this way, we open the channels of forgiveness and love and gentleness and compassion. We make that possible. It makes it possible, as we say, for God to move from Kisei Hadin, the throne of judgment on Rosh Hashanah, to Kisei Harachamim, the throne of compassion where God sits on Yom Kippur. Or maybe if we really want to anthropomorphize God, maybe it's almost as if God is saying, look, you know, I know these human beings are going to screw up all the time, right? On Yom Kippur, we're rightly accused, so to speak, but these people are, they're actually a little more like me than I thought. True, they can't perfectly hold competing truths and values like I can. They're limited. But, you know, they're really trying kind of hard. They're working hard to try to get it. And these people, the ones who are willing to risk walking that narrow bridge, who confront fear and do all the work that we taught, these bridge people, these are people I can work with. So, all right, we'll clean the slate, we'll move forward, we'll keep working together. All of these reasons, I think, also in some way apply to human forgiveness as well, right? It's easier to forgive when we sense the person shares our values. Sometimes the other person's actions open our own well of compassion, right? And sometimes we realize, all right, so it's not perfect. They're not really ready to fully atone yet, but I can work with them, right? There's potential there. But I want to suggest that maybe the key thing about walking that narrow bridge is precisely what I mentioned earlier, that it demonstrates our ability to hold the essence of bridging, which is connecting but not eliminating the gap. It says, I'm willing to be in that kind of relationship, even though it's hard. We know, I said earlier, wrongdoing of any kind creates gaps, right? Between us and the people we care about, within ourselves, etc. But wrongdoing also arises from gaps, from the inevitable distance and differences between us, or more accurately, not from the gaps themselves, but from our unwillingness or inability to acknowledge them and tolerate them, and to successfully navigate relationships across them. We hurt each other sometimes because we see difference and we can't bear it. If you make a different choice than I would make, if you value different things than I value, if you see the world differently, well, sometimes that's a threat to our relationship, or I hear it as implicit criticism of me, or it threatens my identity in some way, or any of the myriad ways in which encountering difference is hard. But we also hurt each other because we don't recognize difference. We don't see it. I assume you need and want what I need and want, that you'll respond the way I'd respond. that you mean what I'd mean if I said or did what you said or did. Right? I've been sort of talking about Jacob periodically, and Jacob wrestling on the banks of the river and becoming a bridge person, right? Jacob had a twin brother, Esau. They were very, very different. Esau became kind of demonized, right? Esau's the designated patient. He's the problem child. Right? There's an amazing commentary by Samson Raphael Hirsch on the way that Rebekah and Isaac raised these two twins. And Hirsch says the problem is that Rebekah and Isaac tried to raise them the same. That you can't raise an Esau the way you would raise a Jacob. And you can't raise a Jacob the way you would raise an Esau. They raised them the same. And maybe if they had understood that each child was different, right? Instead, Rebekah related to the one who's like her, and Isaac relates to the one who's like him, right? And they raised them the same. If they had seen them as the different children they were, the whole story could have been different. We hurt each other sometimes because we mistakenly think we more fully know and understand the other than we actually do. And I don't remember that I've created a picture of you that's comprised of a combination of what I actually know about you and all those things I made up to fill in the gaps. It's like I've allowed the bridge we've built together to seduce me into thinking that we're the same, that we've merged, or that I really know everything about you. But if I'm a bridge person, right, if I really know how to sit in tensions and walk that narrow bridge, then even as I feel so connected to you, I know there's so much more I don't know. And then when I apologize, my apology can be so much deeper, more nuanced, more reliable, because I understand it needs to be. My commitment to changing can be so much deeper and more nuanced, because I understand it needs to be. Have you ever had someone apologize to you? And even though they say, oh, I know I hurt you, I'm so sorry, I did this, and I know that was terrible, I'm so sorry. And they don't get it at all. And worse, they don't know that they don't get it. And it seems like they can't get it or they don't want to. The worst, I'm so sorry you felt that way. But, and I'll just speak very personally, when I'm dealing with someone who really lives this way, who really gets the gap, when that person says, I understand how I hurt you, I understand how you feel, I can trust it, and I can accept it more readily. Because implicit in that is their awareness that they know that they don't fully understand it. They don't fully know me or how I feel. And also, because when a person like that apologizes, I know it emerges not only from embarrassment and guilt and remorse and sadness and the fear of having damaged an important relationship, but from wanting to know more, from learning. Because when you know deeply that bridges connect, but they don't eliminate the gap, then you understand that a huge part of what love is learning. That's a stance that opens the space for forgiveness. In intimate relations, it can often allow the relationship to continue. In the public square, it's the basis for interfaith dialogue. It can often soften polarization. And in relationship with myself, it allows me to be not only disappointed in myself, but surprised at myself in a curious way. To better accept, oh, this is a part of myself I didn't know until now. and it seems to be a part that needs my attention. And it creates a reciprocal obligation. If you apologize, recognizing that you don't fully understand me, then justice requires me to recognize that I don't fully understand you. Theologically, I think that's what allows God to get up from Kisei Hadin and move to Kisei Harachamim. They act like they don't know me at all, God roars through the prophets. Yes, we say. We've been listening. So we know you well enough to know that we don't and can't really know you at all. You know, we're really different from you. Sometimes we're going to get it, and sometimes we're going to get it wrong. And frankly, sometimes it feels like you, being perfect and eternal and all, and us not so much, you don't fully understand us either. They have a point, God says on Yom Kippur. If they're willing to struggle with their connection and distance from me, their knowing and not knowing, if they're willing to walk that narrow bridge, well, I guess I owe them the same. Jacob made himself into a bridge. And then he spent a long night wrestling with what that actually meant. Sometimes we say he was wrestling with an unknown being. I think he was wrestling with the unknowability of other beings. He developed his sensitivity to help others across the river. Remember that? Who needs to be carried? Who just needs a hand to hold? Who might be left behind? And when he opened himself to that awareness, he opened himself also to the awareness of how much he had not and will never know. How might he have misjudged his brother? How little he knows of him, really. He's discovered that not everything can be bridged within himself and with the people around him. Sometimes that's terribly sad. Sometimes reconciliation isn't possible. Yaakov will meet his brother, they will forgive, but they will go their separate ways. Sometimes it means living with one's own brokenness, accepting an unbridgeable gap between our aspirational selves and the real world self that we are. And sometimes it's the source of creativity and energy and vitality. And sometimes it's precisely the unbridgeable gap in which forgiveness becomes possible.